just as a note. So today we have the Konveyor Technical Architecture Forum. We have a couple of topics. The first one being a demonstration and a deep dive into the GitOps primer work that Ryan's done. And then the Jaydip is going to present the plugin manager for Crane 2. If you have any other topics, if you could add them now, that would be awesome. I think we will have some time at the end here. So to start out with the first presentation, we're going to talk about GitOps Primer. And one of the things to note about GitOps Primer is that it's using Crane 2. I think folks have seen these slides before, but we can go through them one more time just to give folks a level set on what Crane 2 is. So can you guys still see my screen okay?
Perfect.
Yep.
Okay, perfect. So Crane 2 is our next step from our lessons learned from Crane 1. And so one of the things that we've talking about is folks who don't have complete cluster admin privileges would like to be able to migrate their own applications between clusters. Folks would like to be able to provision applications from pipelines. So things like Argo or something like that, GitOps workflows, and then how do we integrate that with something around moving persistent volumes and secrets and other stuff in that way. And then the third lesson we learned was we want to take the opportunity when you're migrating your application to improve upon the current situation. So we don't want to just copy, folks don't want to just copy over all of the stuff that they had because a lot of times they don't know what's in there. They don't know what's working, what's not working. And so they want to take this time to do an audit and make sure that they know what's in there, and then how can they make it so they can easily redeploy to a new cluster given the set of stuff. And the other thing is that Crane 1 was very easy to use. It had a great workflow that was simple and straightforward. But if any of your application veered off the expected path, it was very difficult to customize or troubleshoot what went wrong. There's been a bunch of great work that's gone into debugging and things like that in Crane 1, but it's still very difficult to customize. So Crane's two goals was to start with the app owner, with the administrator of that app to be able to, they only have limited access to cluster, and they should be able to move the application to a new cluster. We wanted to break up the pieces into small reusable parts that you could create new and interesting workflows as a power user. This would give us maximum flexibility to enable those more difficult customizable use cases. We also wanted to extend customizations such that folks can easily add their own customizations and throughout their team, throughout the world, throughout whatever. And so this will actually be what Jaydip hits on a little bit in the next demo. And then GitOps onboarding, we really wanted to help people get up to speed, get on to GitOps, and from there show how folks can do that. And so this is a little bit of what GitOps Primer will get into, and Ryan will show a demo of that piece of it. So let's go ahead and go to, sorry guys, the problem domain that most of us are dealing with. We have most of these are what we're talking about now, especially in this demo, is the non-repeatable unknown deployment. So we have an application in a namespace. We don't really know what it is. We have a bunch of YAML that's in that namespace. Things are working, but we don't know how, we don't know all of the YAML. We don't have it in a consistent place where we can go and make changes to it. And I think that's a pretty good place to kick off to Ryan to show the demo of GitOps Primer.
There we go. Headset's working now. All right.
Okay, cool.
So, as Shawn was saying earlier, we really want to kind of force customers or help customers get to GitOps. So, with that, I'm going to kind of show a demonstration of what GitOps Primer does. Before we jump into that, I want to kind of show how Crane and CraneLib has the ability to modify the YAML within your environment to make it come out in kind of a very nice way. The Crane lib repository has a bunch of these things, but I kind of just want to show from a high level from the GitOps Primer project some of the things that we have to do, such as removal of some of the default Tecton run items. Um, we want to remove the cluster IP because that will change between clusters and white out of pods. But you guys just get the picture that, we want to make it so that we're removing the pieces so that people can just run Crane or run GitOps Primer for this situation and have everything they'll need. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and create a new project called Crane within Openshift. And we're just going to kind of keep it simple here. I've already installed the GitOps Primer operator from Operator Hub, and this will allow me to export the things later on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use S2I to just create a simple project for me. I point to the Git repository for a web app, PHP web app. We're going to click create. So the nice thing that happens is once you have the GitOps Primer operator installed and the newest version of OpenShift, you'll see that this export application button shows up. If you don't have a GitOps Primer operator installed, this button won't be visible at all, but once it is installed, then the button actually pops up. So we'll just give this a moment to give us just a clean build, and we'll show that the application exists and can run. And then from there, what we're going to do is we're going to take it, export it, which is going to grab all the resources for us, and then allow for us to take and either place this in a Git repository or just go ahead and spin them up in a different namespace. So kind of bringing it back a little bit, like while this build is occurring, why is this important? We were running into like numerous use cases where customers were like, well, we're not ready to get ops yet. We can't make the commitment. And so what we're trying to do is we're trying to remove the barrier. And if you're a developer, this is kind of nice as well to use Crane in this, because the fact that if you're developing on an application and you're just trying to get it to run, you're adding new functionality, new features, you might not remember what you actually did to get here. So as you see here, we have this PHP application up online available. So what we're going to do is we're going to export it. And what this process is going to do is it's going to pull down Primer Pod, and then once that's pulled down, then you're going to actually see the logs of Crane exporting items and then applying any changes and transforms based on those plugins that I showed within the repository. And then it will give us a link to download all of these bits. So as you can see here, right now we're exporting only the items that we have permissions to access. So when you see that cannot list items, that is because our user account that we're using at the time doesn't have the permissions to actually access those. And as you see, we are done with the process. We wrote the changes, and the download is actually available for us to see. So we'll go ahead and download that. Once it's available, I guess must have shot early. So let's see here. Okay. Try that refresh one more time. So I'll go ahead and log in. And then can't I can't tell if y'all could see this. Let me switch windows real quick. Okay, here we go. Very cool. So as you see, we have the folder of Crane, which was our namespace that we were previously using. And then we have everything that was actually within that project that we have access to. So we have our build config, image stream, route, secrets, so on. So what I can actually do with this is I can now take this and either upload it into Git, or I can right now just quickly show creating a new project and let's do crane 2, and then just going ahead and uploading those in right now. So I'm going on my command line and I'm going to just run the create based off of that folder that I just downloaded and extracted. And then we should see items begin to populate within this topology here in a moment. And so the nice thing is this contains the process on building the new image, and we'll create a unique route for the namespace, and everything will just be ready. So we actually just transferred this application from the Crane project into the Crane 2 project and brought all the assets with us to allow us to rebuild or move it to another cluster. And so as you see, the build is running now, and then our app should be online. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and stop for questions or pass back to Shawn. Scott, you have a question?
Yeah. So the plugins, are they configurable? And easy to add new plugins, like if you need to scrape something else out of your YAML type of thing?
Yeah, so that's actually the nice part about it is the Crane lib project provides Golang functionality, and you can just import it into your project, write the plugin to export or exclude anything you need. When I say export or exclude, you can either white out or you can do JSON patching. Shawn, you can correct me if I'm wrong on this. But you can white out, which means you're just going to completely skip the item, or you can just modify that via JSON patches however you see fit. And then the nice thing is at runtime of using Crane, you can specify a plugins directory, and then you can also at runtime turn certain plugins on and off based on your needs at the time. So it's a really cool functionality that they built in.
Cool.
Any other questions for Ryan? Awesome. Thanks, Ryan. That was really awesome. I'm glad to see Crane being extended to use in a use case that we had considered. So thank you for that. I'm really happy to see this coming into Konveyor as well. The next, I think the next presentation is Jaydip. So I'll hand it over to him, showing off the plugin manager work that he's been working on. Jaydip?
Yep. Let me just share my screen. Do you guys can see the screen?
Yep.
Okay, cool. So I think this demonstration will answer the question that was raised by Scott. Let's get started with the proposal that we made to have a plugin management tool in the Crane. So the high-level summary is we want the Crane command to also list, install, uninstall any plugins that we build. But on top of that, we want users to have their own repositories and or have their own plugins and the ability to add those plugins into the pipeline with the same command. But that's a long-term goal. So right now we are focusing on our plugin repository and ability to list, install, and uninstall our plugins only. So for the goals, the initial goals were to develop a plugin manager command, and just as I said, to have the ability to list, install, and uninstall plugins. And essentially what we are doing is we developed a solution which has two parts. The first part is to maintain a Git repository where we have appropriate YMLs files for each plugins there in plugins folder, and that plugin repository can be used as an example or as a standard for any custom repositories that any user wants to manage, and for any plugins that we want to add on top of what's available. The simple YML file for each plugin manifest should look something like this, where there are a bunch of fields, name, short description, version of the plugin, a list of binaries for different OS architectures, and a URI for each binary, and what are the optional flags available for such plugins. The second part is adding a subcommand plugin manager within Crane itself, where we will have three options initially: list, add, and remove, which will list, add any plugin or remove the plugin from default source. And then respectively, we have these commands with additional flags, which we feel necessary for these commands to work. And then in the future, we want the ability to add multiple repositories from which the plugins can be added and uninstalled from, or lists from. So now let's look at the first part of the solution. There is a Crane repository, a Crane plugin repository available, which is a default source for as of now. And this can be used as example for any custom plugin repositories also. So one such requirement is that there has to be an index file at the root. And this index file consists of a map, basically a plugin name, version, and respective URL for that manifest file. Right now, this repository is made for this demo, but is subjected to change, though, so the contents of this file might be different in future. And then there is a plugins directory in which all the manifest files are there. Let's look at the Openshift manifest file. So right now, this is for the Openshift plugin, where we have optional flags. The URI is only available for Linux AMD architecture as of now, and the rest of the fields are there. Now let's look at the second part of the solution, which is Crane plugin manager. So for that, I'm gonna need to represent the screen again. My internet is kind of slow, so I won't be able to stream the online video, but let's hope this works. I'm gonna demonstrate the plugin manager command in working. This is a voiceover demo. Can you guys hear the voice also, or should I?
It's
No,
working.
We can
You
hear
can
it.
hear it.
Okay, cool. With this demo, and for that, I'm using Eric's Hello Crane demo example. So let's get started. So the first and foremost is a list command to see which plugins are available to me and in what version. So here we can see that there are right now 3 plugins available for current OS Arc, which is PVC processor, HC Whiteout, and OpenShift plugin. Now let's say I want to see more information about the plugins, and I'll run the command with params flag on, and we'll see the optional fields as well. Now I want to filter it out with a specific plugin, so I'll pass down another additional flag with the specific plugin I want the information of. Now let's say I want to add any plugin. I'll use add command to add any plugins that I want into a desired directory. And now we'll see that this plugin PVC processor is now added to the path. Same, I'm gonna add OpenShift plugin, but as we saw that there are multiple versions available, so we'll be asked to insert a version. Let's say I want to add 1.0.8 version. Now I have 2 plugins installed. One is OpenShift, one is PVC processor, and of course one that comes with the Crane itself is Kubernetes plugin. Let's say I want to list the installed plugins within a directory. Then I'll run list with installed flag enable. I want to remove the PVC processor, so I'll run I'll run a remove PVC processor, and which will remove the plugin from desired directory. And then let's check if it is removed or not. It is removed. Then now I'm gonna run export and transform to display that those plugins are getting picked up by the pipeline itself. Here we can see the Openshift plugin getting picked up with the pipeline. And that is also, as of now, we have the functionality to list, add, and install, list, add, and remove any plugins from the default plugin repository. And that is all I had for this demo. Any questions?
Jaydip, do we have any guidance as of right now of how you should add a plugin to the repository? Or are we still working on that?
So the next step would be to actually figure out a release process for the plugins, and then onwards we'll have a guide to how to install, how to add a manifest to a central plugin repository so that it can be discovered. Yeah, but I mean, there are example YML files available on the repository itself, and there is a README to get anyone started. So that should suffice for now.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody else have any questions? Thank you, Jaydip. That was a good demo. Really helpful seeing some of the extensibility come into play and how people can use previous work that others have put out there. So thank you. I don't see anything else on the agenda. Does anybody else have a topic that they would like to bring up today to discuss? All right,
That's a wrap,
nice.
Shawn.
Yeah, perfect. Sounds good. Thanks everybody for joining and watching the demos. This meeting will be posted on the document, and thank you everybody for your time. Have a good one.
Thanks, see ya.
Идем на другую сторону.